The word is on the streets. It's called emotional intelligence, a really important set of skills. More often than not, I am seeing it in, we're looking for people that have emotional intelligence in the top 5 criteria of things we're looking for. And oftentimes it's leveling out as being even more important than sometimes education or experience. It's like, we want this set of EQ skills. And every once in a while I have a little internal laugh, because I don't want to put this laugh out into the world, but an internal laugh of like, well, experience and EQ go a little bit hand in hand in that how we show up today and everything that came before today and in the past contributes to a lot of our emotions, our emotional intelligence, our emotional quotient, our emotional experiences. All of that really comes to the forefront. Now, in particular, or prior to COVID-19, how emotions were showing up and impacting performance was maybe a little bit up for debate. Well, but I'm not really sure if it's important. Sure, some people are demonstrating it. Seems like it might be important, or they're getting ahead, but we're noticing a bunch of people who aren't demonstrating it, and they seem to be at the top of the food chain. So is it important? Isn't it important? The crisis of COVID-19 has certainly elevated the state of emotions for everyone. I don't know if I've entered any conversation in the last 8 weeks that wasn't centered around how people are feeling and how they're managing with those feelings. So it's really heightened the gap within EQ skills and how those gaps are impacting performance. So today in this conversation, I have invited 2 other power hitters within the world of emotional intelligence, fellow coaches, in particular the EQi-2.0 model, my friends Bevan and Jamelle Lindo. We are coaches, executive coaches, coaching of leaders, speakers, presenters. We are all about emotional intelligence any way we can get it out into the world. And making sure that people can really not just understand like what it is, but how to develop these skill sets and how they impact lives personally and professionally, organizationally, in the workplace to the bottom line. So we wanted to come together, record this conversation so that the world can have quantifiable, qualitative measurements and information on the benefits of emotional intelligence and how that can really impact you as an individual, your teams, your organization, your bottom line. We're going to look at it from different angles: personal angle, professional angle, executive presence, EQ skills through crises, in particular through COVID-19. Welcome, my friends.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Great to be here.
So excited. So let's start with EQ through crisis, in particular the heightened needs of emotional intelligence. And Jamelle, what are you noticing as the unique piece that COVID-19 presents?
I think that you touched on it quite a bit there, Teresa, when you talked about the heightened need of it given what's happening right now. And it always fascinates me how emotional intelligence has always been a, is it important type situation, especially when you take a look at our lives. Our lives are totally saturated by emotion from beginning to end. From the moment that we wake up, we're asking ourselves, how do I feel about going in today? Do I not want to? What do I have today? Like the whole thing from waking up to getting into your routine to eating to taking care of the kids if you have a family is all so stewed in emotion. The car ride to work in the pre-COVID world, the traffic, it's so incredibly steeped in emotion. And we look at work and it's the same thing. There are things that we feel that impact the way that we interact, the way that we communicate, or the way that we don't interact and the way that we don't communicate. So it's so fascinating to me that, the question around is emotions or are emotions important still something that we talk about. It's still something that can be considered. So now when we're in a space where things are very emotional and everybody is feeling so much, it's come to the point where you can't ignore it anymore. And so what we're seeing is a greater divide between the leaders who are able to handle the emotions and address the emotions and deal with the emotions that are coming up in this time, and the leaders who are not. And then you have to compound this by the fact that everybody is separated virtually, which means that my need or my ability for connection, for interpersonal skills, for empathy is now that much greater. And if I don't have those skills, you know, people kind of fade away and fall into the cracks, and there goes not only your people, but your performance. So I 100% agree with what you just said. I think that we're in a space now where it's undeniable that emotional intelligence is a critical part of business success. And I really feel that after this, it's going to be almost impossible to ignore.
Michelle, jump in on this goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%, Jamelle, agree with you. It's kind of, to me, you know, I get a visual of a three-legged stool: performance, trust, and emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence was, you know, always there, but just we didn't recognize it as the balancing leg on that stool, the necessary leg. Without it, you fall down, right? Without it, we're lost. So to me, it's absolutely true what Jamelle is saying. We're so emotional right now. You know, people are feeling things that they have felt before but haven't recognized it or haven't admitted it. And now it's, you know, the education piece around what emotional intelligence is and how to lean into those skills to make you a better leader, a better person, better able to handle what's happening now and look to the future with a growth mindset is so key.
There's this element of change in not just like COVID-19 as the piece, but all of the things that have lined up behind it that have forced the hand of change. Changes in policy, changes that we're now working from home, changes in the hours that we work, changes that my spouse is also working from home, my children are home, changes in how I do my grocery shopping. So many changes compounded one over the other. And this emotional element that we speak of as a heightened element is not just about, I have all of these changes lined up, but some of them are lingering emotional experiences. So I might have the shift of a workplace environment, you know, in an office building to now I'm in my home environment, and I could be like quickly adjusted to that. A little bit of shock and denial and frustration around like, oh, well, this is different. How am I going to manage this? And the frustration piece, and then a little low level of energy as, you know, I could be doing my laundry instead of actually getting to work right now. I'm not really motivated in the workspace, so to speak, until we experiment with our schedule and our style of working from the new environment. And all of a sudden we find that our morale and our confidence exceeds even when where we started from in the first place. Not every single change that everyone has had to go through, forced by the pandemic itself, is something that they just can move so easily through and notice the improvement. A lot of people are stuck in the valley of despair, the low mood, the low energy, the low motivation. This dragging feeling can often be correlated with length of time. You tell me we're making a change, we usually bookend it. In 2 weeks, we need to be at this level of performance again. And everyone knows what that is, and everyone's pulling together for that united vision. We don't have a time frame to bookend. And now you're asking me to sustain whatever we're in for as long as who knows how long. I can't do stress for that long.
Right.
I got to step out of it. And yet a lack of emotional intelligence, number one, I might not even be aware I'm in which emotion. Number two, I don't know how to regulate it. And man, I cannot tolerate it for as long as I am. So now we're not just tipping into emotional distress, we're tipping into mental health. And we're seeing strings of days lined up together where people are now tipping over that scale. I mean, there's a recent study when I was just reading the other day, right? This company that they polled their individuals, and 67% of their people rated higher levels of stress at 40% higher or more than they're normally experiencing. I'm like, that is catastrophic levels of emotion that they're incapable of managing. And so performance struggles, bottom line struggles, people start to tip off the deep end. And executives might not know what to do about it.
Right.
Absolutely. I think that was a lot there that you shared. One of the things that stands out is how there's this immense amount of emotion, and that emotion is piling up. So I think that what's important here is before you can even get to the point where you can manage emotion, you have to be able to see it, right? And that's why self-awareness kind of is the entry point into all of the other emotional intelligence skills, because if you're not aware of it, you're not going to be able to manage it. It's the same as managing a team and looking at KPIs. If you don't know how they're performing and what their numbers are, you can't manage it because you can't see it. It's not on your radar. And so self-awareness is a big part of this, and I'm sure we're going to jump in on that a little bit later on in the conversation. The other piece that I want to briefly mention here is that it is easier to be able to deal with emotion when you already have the skills, right? So I want for you to imagine the organizations or the people that invested in themselves to develop their emotional intelligence, their resilience in times where it wasn't like it is now, and now are able to lean into those skills. But then if you look at it from the other perspective, which is, the organization's people, professionals, leaders who did not develop those skills and now are in this situation, it becomes that much more challenging. So I believe that one of the important things for us is to look at ways that we can integrate emotional intelligence, training, development, and learning at all times to help us get through periods like this, right? At the same time, we're already in a period like this. So we have to ask ourselves, what can we do? And I'm sure we'll probably jump in on that as well. One other quick piece that I want to mention here is the component around recovery. As you know, there's a lot of research right now dealing with resilience. What makes a resilient leader? What makes someone capable of dealing with stressful situations? And that's why we're talking about mindset and all these kinds of things. And a big part of resilience that you don't hear people talk about too much is the recovery part of it, right? You need to be out of the game for a certain extent. You need to be able to press pause. You need to be able to walk away. And now with COVID, it's like, well, my work and my life, personal life are kind of one. So how do I walk away and how do I recover? So I feel that a good starting point for most of us is establishing a way to have some kind of recovery on an emotional level, some kind of break, some kind of moment where you are mentally and emotionally removed consciously from the situation to recover. That's one helpful tidbit, and there's so many others, but I'd love to get your thoughts on that piece.
I think that self-care piece is really critical. Putting your own mask on first. And, we've talked about a lot here just in the last 2 minutes, but there's an element definitely of we all have to recognize what we are feeling and have that self-awareness piece. But there is such an important responsibility for leaders now to almost, to take that lead, as it were, to really understand this so that they can help their employees through being, showing their own vulnerability, showing at this point in time, showing communicating, even over communicating, making sure that people feel heard and seen so that they can tap into how people are really feeling and really understand, how they can help them. So it is, the leader has got a little bit of an extra burden here right now to understand how to deal with this situation, not only as an individual, but as a leader as well. And that resilience piece is going to be key for them. So that self-care piece for leaders is highly important right now.